Hello. Today we're going to talk about where your customers live, where your customers actually participate in your business. This is a conversation that was inspired by Mastermind Chat, so I'm going to go check that out and read it now. Okay, question. I'm streaming on TikTok, getting 200-ish viewers. I want to convert them. I'm thinking multi-streaming to Twitch and YouTube at the same time is not going to make as much when I have an audience I want to funnel. I have a primary YouTube. Do I make a variety YouTube? Basically, where do I put these customers? As a response says, I'm pretty sure Twitch converts better. He says, what I mean is, where do I bring my TikTok viewers to? Would I be converting to Twitch or TikTok or to YouTube, and etc. So that is what we're talking about today. Whether you run a business or you're a content creator, this can be relevant to you because you need to know where your customers live. So just to give a little bit of context into like what he's talking about, we live in a marketing ecosystem right now where driving viewers from certain places is going to be easier than driving viewers from other places. So if you want to get customers, acquiring customers from a place like TikTok is going to be incredibly easier, or at least acquiring users. But turning those people into customers will be more difficult. So if you start streaming on Twitch today, the likelihood that you're going to build a business off of that is extremely small. But if you start streaming on Reddit or on TikTok right now, and that's your method of user acquisition, it will be much more effective. In fact, TikTok right now and Reddit are some of the best methods of user acquisition ever. But once you and if you want to talk about user acquisition, you can go to a lot of my videos where I cover that a lot. But today we're not talking about UA as much. We're going to be talking about what to do with those users once you have them. So I'm going to give you a bunch of different possibilities here on what you could possibly do with those users, and in my opinion, the best place to put them. So I want to break down just point by point each one of these possibilities, and then we'll kind of talk through it and see where users live. So YouTube, we'll talk about YouTube real quick, and then we'll talk about TikTok. And talk about Twitch. Streaming services are all the same, so we can kind of just put them in there. So again, this is not acquiring users. This is not getting new people to do something, right? This is acquiring customers. This is, you have a user who has been introduced to you in some way. How do you capture that user in a way that you can now engage with that person, sell them things, or do you just want them to be closer to your community? Whatever your goal is, we're going to talk about. That's what we're talking about. Okay, so it's not the user acquisition part. Is how does that person find you in the first place? The second part of that is there's a video I have on Patreon which is about funnels and just how funnels work. So if you need more understanding of that, go watch that video. It's really important. Okay, so typically things like streaming services and TikTok and Twitter are poor places to hold audiences. So a thing like Twitch is a poor place to hold an audience because you don't control the user, right? Like you can't message them or target them, and also you don't know the user, right? So you only know their screen name, but no demographics, name, contact info, etc. So you want to screen out any platforms where this is true. This is also true on TikTok, right? Both of these are true. So in the exact same way, TikTok is not a great place to have a customer base, which means if you're a content creator and you have a ton of followers on TikTok, but you don't have those followers doing anything else, which is the vast majority of people, you effectively don't really have a user base that I'm interested in as an agency or as a sponsor. You know, we run hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in sponsorship money. We are less interested in a person who has users or followers or whatnot, or a business that is doing on these services because of these reasons, right? So YouTube is a little bit better about this because you somewhat control the user, because you can direct them to via community posts, which right now have, as of the time of this recording, have very high receival rates. So community posts are almost like emails in a way, where you can expect most of your community to actually see. Sorry, and by community I mean, we have to get kind of granular here because there's a bunch of technical stuff. By community I mean the people who are subscribed to your YouTube channel. Most of them will see your community posts. That's great, right? So community posts are actually a legit way to connect with your audience, which is something that TikTok and Twitch do not have. But also, you have the videos themselves, which can be expected to go out to a high amount of subscribers, usually 60% plus. And you have advanced data and demographics. But you still can't contact an individual user easily. And it's a little difficult to upsell product even more so than a live streaming service. Because if you are using your business to acquire users and then do calls to action on a live streaming service like TikTok or Twitch, TikTok Live, you actually have better opportunities. CTAs will do better, like, hey guys, go buy this product, than they will on a YouTube video, just because of the nature of live streaming versus VOD and the direct engagement you can do. So as a business, if you're running 3 streams while you, like, let's say that you craft something, like you craft little plushies or something, and you run 3 live streaming businesses, or sorry, 3 live streams for your business every week, you will typically convert better on those calls to action to selling plushies to people than you would making YouTube videos about it. Now, that you could do both, right? And you should do both, but just for the sake of where your audience should live, it's more difficult to upsell product on YouTube. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes in activations, YouTube actually does better, particularly for well-developed channels. But for smaller operations, to which most businesses will fall into, because most businesses are going to have 2,000 to 3,000, 5,000 viewers. Right? If you can think about all the streaming services like Twitch and YouTube Live, there's not a single business that's consistently running like 3 to 5K concurrent viewers, right? So most businesses aren't using that as a method of user acquisition or where their users should live. Okay, let's talk about Twitter. So Twitter has a lot of the same problems, but you don't know the user, right? Because you only know their screen name and Twitter profile, but you can contact the user in most cases. And your ability to reach out to these users is dependent on the platform. Now, that's a problem, right? That's true for all of these platforms, which is why I wouldn't recommend that your user base actually exists on any of these platforms. Because you ultimately, although I'd say out of all the platforms that are out there right now, you probably have the most amount of control and exposure on YouTube, but that's just current meta. And if YouTube decided to derank community posts, or they made it so less subscribers would see your videos for whatever reason, then you would lose that power. So it's not a great place to control users and to have your users. So let's talk about some better stuff. Let's talk about direct client, which to me means CRM. So CRM is a customer resource manager. It means something like Pipedrive or Salesforce, where you have a direct relationship with a client and you put them in a CRM. This is a great way to, and is the way that many multi-billion-dollar businesses to this day control their user base, whether their clients are businesses or they are users. This is a great way to do it. What you do is you establish a direct relationship either through outbound email or phone call or reference, whatever you want to use. Again, this is not a video about user acquisition. You get that user somehow. You put their name, their phone number, their company, everything they do into a CRM, and then you put the notes of what you have done with that client in that CRM. So let's say I'll just choose a brand at random. We're not actually like representing these people. Let's say we represent Walmart, okay? I would have the contact from Walmart in that CRM. And there are many free CRMs like Pipedrive or Sugar, for example, that will do this for you. So you don't need to spend like a huge amount of money on Salesforce, but everybody should have a CRM. Like if you're listening to this and you have a business, you should have a CRM. Even if you're like a content creator and your clients are like YouTube subscribers, the people you do business with, the sponsors, things like that, you want in the CRM. So let's say with Walmart, I have established a relationship with a VP there. I'm going to put down that VP's name. I'm going to put all the information in. And then I'm actually going to put in, like, for me personally, I'm going to put in stuff like likes cats or particularly likes this brand of water. I'll remember specific details about that person through those notes, as well as the details of our correspondences. So as well as notifications to me to be able to follow up with that person. So if I don't develop that relationship for like 3 to 6 months, I will actually have notifications that will come back and be like, hey, contact this person because this person, you have to talk to this person. And sometimes it's just good to you get a lot of repeat business that way. So CRM is a great way to control users, but doesn't work at scale if you're building a brand because there will be too many. And it won't be, if your customers are people who buy your products or services or support you via something like content creation, you will not be able to keep up with a CRM. Because let's say, like for me, I don't know, we have like something like 500 patrons and some hundreds of thousands of people that follow me over various different platforms. So there's no way I can like keep a client base through direct client. Though I do have direct client, right, for all kinds of relationships, sponsors, things like that. Anybody that kind of like goes through that. So what do you do if you don't have if you can't use direct client or you need a better system? The next best one is email and newsletter. So email is incredible. And I think email is so good. You still can get like 70 to 90% open rates on email today. And email has just stayed as consistent as one of the most effective and best ways to manage user bases. You control the user and you know the user because you can get a lot of data, full name and details and signups and email. So you have direct contact to that user both personally and at scale. And and the calls to action to those emails are really successful. So you want to sign up for a service like MailChimp, break down your email lists, and then based on data that you get from other places. So for example, you can use a service like Shopify if you're a product-based company. And through Shopify, you'll send out, let's say, like a newsletter blast to 5,000 people advertising your new product that you're launching. Then on Shopify, everybody that signs up for that product, you now have all of that data from Shopify, which is immense data, right? It's like direct demographics. It's where they clicked through, where they left the website. You could take a list of your top 200 buyers, for example, and you could send a special message to every one of those people or a special gift. So for example, at CounterLogic Gaming, as a previous company I ran, every year we would take our top 50 to 100 spenders on our store, and then we would send them autographed cards from our LCS team, our players. And that would be like just like a really huge thing, right? So you could do things like that with that kind of data, and you can kind of immediately see how your control of that user, and when I say control of the user, I don't want that to be connotated negatively. What I mean is like control is good, right? Because the more control you have, the better relationship you can have with your customer. And those customers were really happy to get that example that I used before was CLG. That's like great, right? Like imagine that you spent a bunch of money on a store and you spent it because you just wanted to spend it. You were just excited about that team or whatever. And then completely without prompting, you get a signed card from like your favorite player. That's awesome, right? That's just a really cool thing. So control is good. It's not like a negative thing to be in control of your users, really, or to have control over knowing your users. The more you know your users, the better. So email and newsletter is really fantastic. Another option is for direct support is Patreon-like services. So this is the one that I personally prefer because you both know your user and you can contact them directly. So I can contact every single person that's in my Believer tier, for example, at $100 and give them special options. And I intend to, right? Like that's one of the things that we're implementing pretty soon is I'm always trying to up the services on Patreon is just like a free call about whatever you want after a certain number of months, probably 3 or 4 months. Because you can have a call every 3 or 4 months with me, whatever you want, if you want to use it, right? Because just supporting at a very high level that I appreciate, that I want to help out with. And that comes in at under the consulting cost that I would normally have. And also, like, there's not like a 6-month, 8-month wait for whatever the hell my consulting thing is now. So Patreon-like services are great because you have the email, you have full name, you can directly message the user, and you can give updates. And update notifications actually work through email. So you can send, effectively, you have a newsletter as well. So you can send Patreon updates that will go directly to a person's email that they are likely to see because they are paying to support you, right? So Patreon is a phenomenal service. It's not viable for all businesses, though. Like if you're a product-based business, you can't maintain your people through Patreon, and you should maintain your people through email and newsletter. And if you are a service-based business, same thing. Although you might be surprised what businesses could actually run a Patreon. So I actually think that a lot of like brick and mortar retail type stores or people that are selling product that also want to have like an outward facing brand component could actually run a Patreon. I think a lot of esports teams could run it. I think a lot of it's kind of like they're not thinking about it, but certainly every content creator ever could run one. A lot of people don't think about this though. But yeah, you might be surprised, like thinking about, okay, like would this be a viable vertical for me to run? If you really think it through, it might actually be the case that Patreon is good for that. So think about that. But email newsletter combined with direct relationship with client is going to apply to the vast majority of businesses. And then for the vast majority of content creators, you're going to do user acquisition via one of these services. And then you're going to hopefully toss those people to an email or newsletter. So the answer to the question in the mastermind of, okay, I've got a bunch of UA coming in from TikTok. How and where do I send these users? The answer to that is you do short form video where you like point at the end and it pops up. On TikTok, there's a method right now where you can create a playlist. The playlist has, because you can't link off platform, the playlist can be a link, and then the link is sent to the people copy and paste the link. They can put it into a web browser or whatever. So you would send, it depends on your business. If you're a content creator, it would be more reliable to send those to a place where you have ideal control. If you wanted to really optimize this, you would create a web page, and then you would have a direct link that's like all of your media on that web page, like a link tree. You would send them there and get them to sign up for an email address. So it wouldn't be a link tree; it'd be like a link tree, and you would get like a little pop-up notification email. And there's APIs that'll build this out for you, like in Mailchimp or things like that. That would be the most intelligent thing to do, is to direct those people to a place like your email newsletter. Realistically, you might just want to upgrade them one step to a better platform. So like the step up from TikTok would be like YouTube. The step up from, you could also like put them to Twitch, but like a lot of people are going to be tempted to do this. Like if you're streaming TikTok live and you're going to be tempted to bring these users to Twitch. You actually aren't doing any better by sending them to Twitch. You're not actually doing any better at all, or Twitter or anything like that. So sending them to YouTube is a little bit better, but still bad. Getting them into the funnel of a email newsletter where you send out something every week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or a month, depends on your cadence and kind of what you're doing, about what you're doing and where to find you, is the best option for long-term customer acquisition. And then at some point, you have enough live users or subscribers who have followed you through that email. So that email would list like, here's my YouTube, here's my TikTok, here's my Twitter. You'd have most of those users, because they're dedicated users now, they've followed you via email, they're getting updates from you, they're interested in something you're providing, would follow you on most of those platforms. You'll reach a critical mass, and then you'll start to get user acquisition from the other platforms. So YouTube, Twitch, places like that will start to acquire you users because you'll have a high enough threshold to actually be able to acquire them. So the actual answer is that you point those people towards email, or if you are too lazy to do that, which I suspect most content creators will be, you point them towards YouTube, and then you say subscribe here. And but I can't stress enough the importance of having users on email and having users on direct support services. So you could also, one step you could convert that user to a paid user. So if you're a TikTok broadcaster, for example, or a Reddit broadcaster, you could drive those users to a Patreon, and you could have a very low entry fee if you're small, like $1, and you can provide services there. Now, again, that kind of depends on the type of content you want to do, but I guess the takeaway here is don't mix up user acquisition with customer, how do we call this? I guess retaining customers. Your user acquisition is going to be a separate strategy, but the customers that you have, that you monetize, and that you can rely on are not going to be people that you should keep on a platform like the aforementioned ones. Because if you did, you would have far less engagement with that user over time, and it wouldn't be worth the ROI. And you'd basically just be giving these platforms press, right? So the idea is, think through your strategy of user acquisition, and we have videos about that. But then quite separately, think about this strategy of, okay, well, where does my user actually live and why? And base it on the variables, A, how much control do I have over that user? And B, how much do I know about that user? Now, so I haven't mentioned every platform in the world on this video, but I've given you a framework to apply it to every platform in the world. So those are the indicators that you should use to be able to say, okay, how much do I control this user? You could be thinking about a platform that I'm not thinking about, like LinkedIn, for example, where you might control a lot about the user and know a lot about the user. Because if you do LinkedIn, for example, just like coming up with that right now, you know the name of that user, you know where they work, you know a bunch of stuff about their demographics, and you simultaneously can message them directly as well if they follow you. So that's an option, right? That's a really competitive option. So the options that I've given you today are by no means an exhaustive list of the things that you can do to acquire users and have them retain, but it's a framework of thinking that it's important to be able to actually utilize those users down the road, whether you want them for paid opportunities or you just want to be closer to them. So there are other opportunities like Discord, for example, where Discord is pretty good because you know your user a little bit better and you can control them a lot better, but you still are kind of several steps removed in that you can directly message that user, but like it's not a very good categorization system of users. Like you can't very easily see a list of users or how dedicated they are. That versus something like Patreon, where you can see exactly if you have 5 users in the $1 tier and 10 users in the $5 tier, right? You know a lot more about that and what those users are spending and what benefits they're getting. So categorization of users is important as well. The way that that's the 3 factors, right? Is how well you know your user, how well you can control your relationship with that user, and then thirdly, how that user is presented to you in a data format and the data that is provided to you about that user. So do you, like on Twitch, for example, sure, you can theoretically see a list of all of your followers, but it's useless. There's absolutely nothing you can do with that. Whereas on a newsletter, you can see a list of names, people that have bought from you before via linking through Shopify, people that have clicked through, open rates, a lot of data, right? So that's really way more useful. And you can see that all on MailChimp in just like one place. And Shopify is an incredible place, for example, too, if you're doing product. That's why so many people use Shopify. You could see everybody who's bought from you, when they bought, how much money the average sale was, on and on, right? And so you can, both on a macro and micro level, you can get a lot of data. Some other services like YouTube, less so, you get a lot of macro data, very little micro data on individual users, right? So you have to evaluate all these things. And based on that, you can probably figure out where your user wants to live and where you want your user to live. And then you should direct all people to that, right? And then basically ignore everything else except for user acquisition. Now you can have those platforms, right? So as a business, you can have a Twitter, an Instagram, a TikTok, right? But you are going to have one place that those people ought live, that you're going to be goal set to be able to point those people to, and you're going to have only a couple of places that you want to use for actual user acquisition. The rest of them are you're just going to kind of either syndicate content or sort of pay lip service to having it, and just so that you can be more exposed. Cool? Okay, so that's some thinking to do around frameworks around users and user retention, and I hope it helps. Let me know. Bye.